Welcome back to the Long Free Ride, and this episode is part 2 of our Dorset special where we stay at Goathorn Cottage for a week. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, you might want to go and check out that video. As I said, we're in Dorset and the cottage is in Poole Harbour.
So we've been at our cottage now for a couple of days. We've got a small break in the weather, but it may only be a small break because, as you can see, clouds are looking somewhat ominous over there. But we have a little bit of sunshine, and we've been out this morning, done some driving in the car, and it's time to put it on charge. So I thought I'd spend just a couple of moments showing you how we charge the Tesla if the only thing we've got is a 3-pin plug. So let's have a quick look. In the boot of our Tesla and a lot of electric cars, as well as the sort of main floor of the trunk or boot, we've got a cabinet or a little cubby hole underneath, and in there we've got our Tesla charging kit that you kind of get with the car. So I'll grab that out. You can see I'm carrying a couple of other cables as well. The blue one is for plugging into an on-street charger, and it's known as a Mennekes cable, but basically it's quite a low power charging cable. And I've got a couple of other adapters here for plugging in things when we're in Europe. But anyway, let's have a look at what's in the actual pack that Tesla give you. So, opening up the pack that we get with the car, we have this particular connector. I think it's often known as a commando plug. It is a 30 amp connector. And is used at a lot of RV and camping sites. So you can take that, plug it into the outlet that the camping site provider gives you, and then you can attach it to the lead that charges the Tesla. Or you get the classic UK 3-pin 13 amp, and again the same connector to connect to the charging cable, and that's the one we're going to be using in a minute. And then you actually get the charging cable and the unit itself. So that's the plug that goes into the car. This is a little box that indicates whether or not the unit is happy and whether it's charging. It will give a little green light, as we'll see when we go plug it in. So we plug that into that, and this is going to go into our wall outlet. This is going to go into the car. We're not going to charge that quickly. In terms of physical miles it would put into the car in an hour, you're probably looking at around 5 to 6 miles an hour. So this is a sort of 3 kilowatt charger. If you were able to plug in and get 30 amps from something like this, you'd be looking at like 7.5 kilowatts per hour. My car can store up to 90 kilowatts. So with something like this, you could charge the car up in about 12 hours or sort of overnight. If it was completely empty and you wanted to go completely full, but as you already know, if you've watched our channel, that's not what we do. If you were using something like this and it was 0 and you wanted to go all the way to 100, it could take you a day and a half. But that's, again, not what you generally do. You generally do not charge using a 3-pin plug. But we're in the middle of nowhere, and we're not in the middle of nowhere, but we're at the end of a pier, and the only electricity that we've got here is a 3-pin plug. So that's what we're going to use. Anyway, let's get the car backed up and we'll get it plugged in. So we've got a sort of shed here that we can plug into. So if we take our 3-pin adapter, get that plugged in, and you can see now we've got a green light on the charging brick that runs along. I've sort of put it out the window here. So let's go out to the car, fall out the doorway, open the flap, and then plug in our trusty plug. And you can see we then got the green lights flashing away, which is never a bad thing. And if we come back inside the shed, you can see now the power brick is indicating that it's providing us with some charge. Now, one of the things to note is this is needs to be a 13 amp, obviously, piece of wire or plug that you're plugging it in, and really there needs to be little or no other load on it. I believe the charger will take around 10 amps, leaving you 3 amps on that circuit. But if you've got other things that are consuming a reasonable amount of electricity on that circuit, you can end up overloading that particular outlet. So just be aware of that. And let's go and have a look at what it tells us in the car. And so if we look in the car, you can see it's telling us there that we're drawing 10 amps and it's giving us 2 kilowatts of charging. I think it probably will go closer to 3 once I get out the car and the heater isn't running and other bits and bobs to do with me having got in the car. But even then, it's going to take probably, if you wanted to get it all the way up to 100%, it'll take over a day. But we're not going to need to do that. We're just going to get it up to about 50-60%. So hopefully, if we come to use the car tomorrow, it'll already be nicely sitting there ready for us.
We were very lucky to have a clear evening, and this shot is taken literally outside the cottage lounge back door, overlooking Poole Harbour and the Sandbanks ferry that we crossed on the way to get to the cottage. Absolutely still, absolutely beautiful, absolutely freezing, and you know I don't like the cold, so that's more than enough of that.
Tuesday morning brought some bright autumnal sunshine and lighter winds. The break from the wind and the rain made the brave, or foolhardy, you take your pick, go for a swim. Michelle's mum has had to take a dip on every visit to Goathorn, and so she took to the water. It's as if the waters around Goathorn give her a yearly baptism or rebirth. Whilst Poole is no competition to the likes of Southampton, it does have cross-channel ferries to the Channel Islands and France, as well as some freight services. This is around the largest size of ship you'll generally see using the port.
Over the years, this jetty has been the best place for our annual crabbing competition. We always make sure to set the crabs free at the end and race them down the slipway into the water. We've also jumped off the jetty and swum round the left towards the West Beach with this tyre swing, or round to the right, which actually goes past the lounge window of the cottage. We've used the jetty to clamber in and out of boats a lot over the years. From this point, we might set off, let's say, canoeing round Brownsea Island, or even in the Rib across to Poole to get an ice cream.
There are 5 main islands within the harbour basin, which is the second largest in the world, don't you know? The biggest is Brownsea Island, now a National Trust property, and famous as being one of the last refuges of red squirrels within southern England. Next is Fursey Island that, like Goathorn Point, has a couple of oil extraction sites as well as a single property. There is a motorised barge that can be seen from the cottage taking industrial equipment to and from the island once or twice a day. Then we have Green Island, which is privately owned and has a single large property with its own jetty and, according to Wikipedia, a helicopter landing pad. Lastly, a Round Island and Long Island, which are pretty much joined at low tide. Of these two, Round is populated and Long is not. However, it is owned by a property development company, so there may be building works there at some point.
One of the paths from the cottage takes us through the private forest, and this time of year there are some beautiful autumn colours.
If you're going to get the drone out, well, I guess you have to have the compulsory droney, right? A band of rain came through late morning, and we thought we'd go take a look around the village of Corfe Castle. You might think the village is here because of the castle, but it was the trade in clay for pottery that brought people and development to the area. In 1796, of the 96 men involved in local industries and living in the town, 55 were clay cutters. But today most people associate Corfe Castle with, well, the ruined castle. Like most castles, it started small and then developed over centuries. Originally founded by William the Conqueror, it was finally brought to its current state not by some great battle, but by an order of Parliament after the English Civil War. Many English castles were made useless in a process known as slighting, so they could no longer be used as refuges by royalty. Being Halloween, the village store had dressed its window appropriately. The constant heavy showers had left the track to the cottage very wet, and after splashing through these puddles, the Tesla was definitely going to need a good wash once we got it home. The sunshine the next morning had the bees doing what bees do within the last of the summer blooms. The local fishermen had got out before the forecast arrival of Storm Ciarán. And the waters in the harbour remained high, meaning that anyone venturing along the jetty was likely to come back with wet feet. This red admiral butterfly had clearly not been looking at the calendar, as it was now the 1st of November. But sadly its summer of bringing beauty to the British hedgerows would have been over shortly after, as colder temperatures spread across the UK.
At this point in the week, we were seeing on the news reports that there was a storm on its way. The wind had picked up. It began to feel like we really were quite isolated at the end of this long and windy track, surrounded by forests and some very, very tall trees. Between all of the rainstorms we had, we did quite often get to see rainbows, and sometimes there were even double rainbows like this one. Can you see that on one it's the standard set of colours you'd expect in a rainbow, and on the second rainbow the colours are inverted, so the red is the smallest star. Apparently it's something to do with light refraction.
It's coming up to midnight, the power's out, the storm is raging. So we're guessing there's a tree probably down on the power lines. And we'll have to find out tomorrow what we can do, because we have no water as well, because the water is pumped. So no electricity means no water.
And no heating.
And no heating. And no light.
No roast lamb.
And no roast lamb. But there are people with bigger problems.
So this beautiful sunrise footage was actually taken the day after Storm Ciarán. And that's because in the aftermath of the storm, I was busy mopping the kitchen floor where a fridge had leaked, and we were walking up the lane to clear branches and things that would have prevented vehicles safely getting to the cottage. We also had to contact the landlady, and she very kindly brought round litres and litres and litres of water for us, because with the power out there was no water pump, so we couldn't run any of the taps and get water. Eventually our week was up. Thankfully there was a final rainbow we saw on our way out.
Heading home, I chose to drive around the harbour via Wareham for our return journey. Whilst it did give us one last look at Corfe Castle, it turned out to be painfully slow.
So we left Goathorn at about 11 o'clock this morning. It's been an interesting week, slightly more eventful than normal. So I woke up at 4 o'clock on Saturday morning and was not very well. So ended up going back to bed about 8:30 on Saturday morning and spending most of the day in bed. You guys went out and had fun though, didn't you?
Yeah. Went for a walk and stuff.
Yeah.
But the weather has been changeable to say the least.
Yep. We had a
Um,
blocked toilet on Sunday afternoon, so you and Dad had to do some work there.
Yeah, just block toilet work.
Yep, blocked toilet work.
Teenagers and too much toilet paper.
And then Dad slipped and hurt his back. I think that might have been Monday. So we've been nursing that all week, which means his mobility's been a lot less than usual.
And then we had Storm Ciarán, the third named storm of the year, roll in, and that took all the power out.
Yes. And the cottage was pretty close to flooding, the closest I've ever seen it. It didn't, but yeah, the water was coming over the patio, which we've never seen before. So, and the pier got slightly damaged.
Yeah.
Or jetty or pontoon or whatever.
Easily repair that though.
Yeah. Yeah. But just not seeing anything like it. And the tide remained high all week. We've not had that experience before. But yes, in between rain showers, we got out. It was good.
Yeah, it was an enjoyable week. Lots of rainbows to see. You've probably already seen that in some of the footage.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
we did a little trip round Swanage and Corfe.
We did. Goathorn is always a lovely place to visit because it is so isolated, and so it is only you and whoever has either invited you there or you've taken there, and it's it's just very close to nature. So quite nice.
Yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it.
I promised footage of the Havant/Portsmouth Supercharger, so here it is. Make sure you're subscribed as we have a Christmas treat coming up for you in a couple of weeks. And thanks for tuning in.